every day. It's kind of an impossible place to run a national campaign.
I was literally telling somebody just like earlier today, like Alaska is like the last place I think that I really don't have anybody to talk to. This is so awesome, dude, my man. Thank you so much. I'm so excited. Alaska.
Where are you all located? Are you all over the country?
Yeah.
All right. That's even
Nice.
Yeah, I'm in Massachusetts. Colleen's in New Hampshire.
I'm in Texas.
Virginia, he's a big cat. Go ahead, Clayton.
Yeah, I'm in Texas.
Texas, all right.
Hell yeah.
I'm in Arizona.
It's amazing how much.
Sun.
Yeah, it's amazing how much we have in common with Texas. Alaska's got a lot of similarities, other than the temperature.
Yeah, I wish we were getting that oil check. I wish we had that in common.
Thank you very much.
So have you ever had any have you ever been in office before, Al?
No, I've been in leadership positions in everything I've ever done. I grew up in Juneau, and I've been friends with and been basically in the shadow of the state's leaders since the state was born.
So what accomplishment are you most proud of achieving in your last since you started?
Well, my proudest accomplishment is I've got four really successful kids in their 20s who are doing really great.
Well, I meant like, I meant in the politics wise. I'm sure the kids, yeah.
I guess I'm proudest of the fact that I've been able to get so many people to believe in the possibility of me winning this race. And when I stepped into this, really 3 years ago, I was someone who had never run for public office before, and there are a lot of people in the state who have. And I met with most of the state's leaders for well over a year in businesses and Native organizations, and tried to get a feel for whether or not I could get their support if I did this. And I knew it was really important in Alaska to clear the field in the primary and to not get engaged in a really contentious primary race, because Alaska's got a very, very late primary. And I knew that I was going to be running against Dan Sullivan, who comes from a billionaire family in Ohio, who is backed by the Koch brothers and Americans for Prosperity. And I knew I was going to have to raise a lot of money in this race in order to beat him. And that's just the way elections are, unfortunately. And so I knew I needed to clear the field, and I was able to get everybody to jump on board.
Awesome. I'm sorry, I just have one more. I don't mean to dominate all the questions, but what are your future plans to work with the Yang Gang, and how will you continue to bring us value through our relationship with you?
Well, I'm willing to listen to and work with anyone who I think is going to be helpful to the country. And I really loved meeting Andrew. Gosh, Nathaniel, how many months ago that we spoke with him? Probably at least 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Kind of losing track of time at this point. He's very interested in the Alaska UBI, and of course I grew up around the birth of that, and I was literally out on a duck hunting trip with my father and the governor when they hammered out some of the finer points of the issue. So our country's in such a bizarre place right now with COVID. All the Republican leaders coming down with COVID. The country, I believe, is in a lot of trouble for the next year or so. And however I can work to best help the people. I stepped up to do this in part because Dan Sullivan really turned his back on the healthcare issue, and Alaska's got the most expensive healthcare system in the entire world, and it's really holding back our economy. So I'm somebody who really cares about fixing some of the injustices in this world. And as a doctor, I saw the injustices of the healthcare system and the pharmaceutical industry. I don't know a lot of other injustices. And
I appreciate that. Yeah. I was really sorry. I was really hoping for maybe something. Do you have any like concrete deliverables?
What are you looking for?
I mean, Ed, could we get into Dr. Al going into his intro and
just wondering. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, let's get this formally started. I apologize.
Thanks, buddy. All right. Thanks.
Yeah. So all right, for everyone watching at home, can we get the slides up on the screen and begin this formal introduction?
Colleen, I believe you have them.
Are there other people on this call other than just the people that I see?
I think it's being recorded. So other people
You
will
might be able to see more people if, I don't know if it's basically just the cameras that you're seeing or not.
Yeah. Also, this is like being broadcast live. That's why we're about to go live on YouTube here.
Okay,
So.
hold on for just a second.
You look great, by the way. You too, Nate. Smile though. All right. Hell yeah.
All right. So thank you, everyone. Are we ready to broadcast, Annie?
We are broadcasting already. We have been.
Oh boy. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us to the Sunday night leading. My apologies. Our Sunday night AMA. Joining us as our special guest is Dr. Al Gross. Dr. Gross, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, well, hi, and thanks for the opportunity to be on your show. My name's Al Gross, and I'm a lifelong Alaskan. I'm an orthopedic surgeon. I'm also a commercial fisherman. I've got very deep roots in the state through both my mom and my dad, who were pivotal figures in the state since the birth of the state. And I don't like the direction of our state or our country in the direction that they're going. And I stepped up to run because I'm someone who really cares about Alaska. I'm somebody who really cares that our country is splitting apart more and more, and I want to work to bring it together. And because I'm somebody who cares, and because I really thought I could win the race. I thought I was in a very strong position to win and beat Dan Sullivan. I grew up in Juneau, Alaska. I was born and raised there shortly after an avalanche rolled off the mountain. My mom was 9 months pregnant, and a couple of weeks later I was born. It tore through our house. And the whole community turned out to dig out the house, and my mom and dad just fell in love with that community spirit, and that's what I grew up living. My dad went on to be the Attorney General alongside our legendary Governor Jay Hammond. Dad was a Democrat, Jay Hammond was a Republican, and their bipartisan friendship and working relationship is really what led me to register as a nonpartisan independent when I was 18. And of course, Dad and Jay created, and other people helped create the permanent fund and the permanent fund dividend, the UBI here in Alaska, and our rural school program, and many other amazing programs here in the state. My mom was a little bit less political, but she founded the Alaska League of Women Voters back in the 60s and was the founding director of the United Fishermen of Alaska here in the state. And I was a real go-getter kid. I started 2 businesses when I was 14. I had a ski and a skateboard business, and I also bought my first commercial fishing boat with a bank loan that my mom and dad co-signed. And my first year was kind of a disaster fishing. My boat broke down halfway through the season, and I was unable to make my loan payment in the fall, but my mom and dad, held me to my word. And so I was forced to sell the boat, and I learned some hard lessons at a really early age. But I persisted in commercial fishing and fished all over the state in 5 different fisheries over the next 10 summers and put myself through college and medical school. I took a year off after high school and fished off the Norwegian, in the Norwegian Sea on a great big Norwegian longliner for cod in the middle of the winter for 4 months. And I traveled through Europe and the Middle East for the rest of that year. But I became a doctor because I really love people. I love listening to people and helping people. And I discovered that I was very good with my hands through commercial fishing and through my background hunting growing up in Alaska. So it was a natural fit for me to become an orthopedic surgeon, where you put things back together when they're broken. And I met my wife, Monica, on the very first day of medical school. She and I were friends through most of medical school and started dating near the very end of it. And we did our residencies together in Ann Arbor, Michigan. She went on to become a pediatrician. And then she and I returned back to my hometown of Juneau. We worked really hard in Juneau for about 25 years, or Southeast Alaska for 25 years. We raised our 4 kids there who went through public school, and I built a practice from scratch. I went on to become chief of the medical staff in Juneau. I also created a multi-specialty group in Juneau and was the president of that. So I've been in leadership positions in my whole life, and I saw what healthcare, what the costs of healthcare were doing to the people around me, most of whom are commercial fishermen. They're my best friends, and who are small business owners. And because of my background in the state, I really understood and saw where the money was going in the state. And it was, in Alaska, healthcare being more expensive than anywhere else in the world is 35% of the state budget. And teacher or educational wages, public safety wages are stagnant, and our state budget is really suffering in part because of its really high healthcare costs. And as we're trying to get away from an oil-based economy on a worldwide basis, we need to diversify our economy here in Alaska. And it's really hard to diversify an economy when healthcare is triple the national average, and you're never going to get finance companies, technology, information businesses to move to Alaska when they can set up shop down south for a fraction of the cost. Dan Sullivan really turned his back on the healthcare issue when it came up in the Senate several years ago, voted repeatedly, actually ran on trying to tear down the Affordable Care Act with no idea to replace it. And when he started to vote against it repeatedly in the Senate, I just got mad because I really realized he didn't understand what was driving and what was holding back the state economy, the struggles that people were going through here in the state. And I saw a pathway to win. But before then, I walked away from my practice after 25 years because I was really dissatisfied with the delivery of healthcare here in America. I thought we could do better. So Monica and I went back to school, got our master's degrees in public health at UCLA. And then I came back to Alaska and made a name for myself on a statewide level, talking about healthcare costs as they relate to the economy. And then when Dan voted repeatedly against healthcare, I saw a pathway to step up and win. So we moved to Anchorage. I started networking with people all over the state. I got an increasing amount of support from them. I was able to, we launched our campaign back in July a year ago. But after first going on a statewide listening tour for 3 months, where I traveled all over the state by commercial fishing boat, small plane, large plane, and roads, just listening to people and listening to their concerns and trying to get a feel for whether or not I might be able to get their support. And I just got more and more support in this. So we finally launched the campaign back in July, and we've been gathering steam ever since. And the race is currently tied in all public polls, internal polls as well. And Alaska is a very small state, and we're expecting somewhere between 300 and 350,000 voters. We only have about 720,000 people in the whole state. And Alaska is failing economically. We've been losing people to the lower 48 for the last several years. We've been in an economic recession for really the last 5 or 6 years. And our Republican governor is currently under recall effort, and that kind of got squashed because of COVID. The whole signature gathering effort really fell flat when people were restricted to their homes. But Alaska is continuing to get hurt very, very badly by COVID. Our tourism industry was completely destroyed and is probably going to be hurt well into next summer as well. And the price of oil fell through the floor. And Alaska is so dependent on the oil industry here. 1 out of 3 jobs is oil based in this state, and that's what contributes primarily to our state budget. So I think the people in the state are very dissatisfied with the status quo, and see me as somebody who can get the state going back in the right direction. I think we've got a great chance to win this seat. And I stepped up to do this for my state because I really care about Alaska and was very dissatisfied to see the direction that it was going. National issues were less of a concern back then, but they're front and center right now. Our country's getting split more and more apart. There's racial and social injustices are front and center on a national level. And we're in the midst of a worldwide pandemic, of which our president has been inadequate at supplying leadership to the people of our country. So that's the state of the race, and our fundraising's gone really well ever since we launched the race. I've worked really, really hard and been successful with gaining a lot of support both statewide and nationally. RBG's passing away, I think, helped our race because it's becoming increasingly clear that Amy Coney Barrett, who's very likely to be confirmed, is very likely to strike down Roe v. Wade and the Affordable Care Act if and when it gets to the Supreme Court. And these are issues people really care about here in Alaska. Alaska is a pro-choice state. They don't think government should get involved in people's personal lives. and you know, people are strongly for protecting coverage for pre-existing conditions and for someone to step up and address the high costs of healthcare. We have a lot of federal and state employees. We've got a lot of veterans and active duty military, many of whom don't consider healthcare to be a problem because they have what they consider to be good coverage. But at least a third of the state, and maybe up to half, are very concerned about healthcare costs. And even the ones that are not concerned see the state doing very poorly, and see our teachers leaving the state, seeing our public safety officers leaving the state because the grass is greener down south with respect to wages and benefits. And when I grew up, the teachers were the highest paid teachers in the entire country. We're not even close now. We used to be able to recruit really high quality teachers, and now we're having a hard time holding on to them. So I think for a lot of reasons, we're in a very strong position to win and flip this seat. And I'm excited to be in this position, and I really appreciate all of your support.
Thank you, Dr. Gross. We definitely need someone that has taken to heart the Hippocratic Oath in public office. So we will be taking questions from the audience here on Zoom and on YouTube. All right, beginning with Jim McBride. Jim?
Hi, Dr. Gross. I guess I'm going to turn the light on here because I'm going to go into a private room. I was trying to watch football for a little while, but let me get away from the TV. I went to your Wikipedia to figure out a little bit about the situation in Alaska, how it works with Democratic primaries. So, you know, from my understanding, you're an independent, but you were allowed to work, you were allowed to run for the Democratic primary, and that actually the Alaska Democratic Party sued somebody to get permission for people from other parties to go for their nomination, kind of like a not Republican nomination, I guess. So could you explain a little bit about how you became the nominee, or
Sure.
like how you're positioned? And the other question I have is, unfortunately, the DSCC website is not very good. So I don't even see who their candidates are on their website. But does this mean you're affiliated with the DSCC or the Democratic Party officially?
No, it's a good question, Jim, and it's unlike a lot of other states. Alaska is full of nonpartisan independents. It's almost 60% of the electorate. And then the rest of the electorate is split 2-to-1 Republican to Democrats. And 2 years ago, the Alaska Democratic Party decided to open up its primary to allow independents to run in it. And Elise Galvin ran against Don Young for Congress. Don Young is the longest serving congressman in the country. He's been there for, I believe, close to 44, 46 years. And Elise was able to clear the field in the Democratic primary. She had an opponent, Dimitri Shine, but she ran in the primary as an independent against a Democrat, won the race, and became the Democratic nominee. The same thing happened in my race. I decided to run in the Democratic primary as an independent. There was one other independent and a Democrat that ran against me in the primary. I won the primary with 85% of the independent and Democratic vote. And leading up to the primary, I should say, the Alaska Democratic Party endorsed me last October, I believe it was, and that was before our primary, obviously. And then I believe in December, the DSCC took notice of this race and endorsed it as well. I will caucus with the Democrats. The Republicans have failed absolutely miserably when it came to addressing healthcare when they had the House, the Senate, and the presidency. And I believe that the Democrats are motivated to strengthen and improve the Affordable Care Act. And I'd love to be the doctor that gets the public option across the finish line. That would be a tremendous accomplishment. I think it would bring competition into the marketplace, make healthcare more affordable, and drive down rates in the private healthcare industry as well. So I would like people to have the option to buy Medicare at cost at no one else's expense. There are a lot of people who don't want their insurance disrupted, and so I think that's fine. I let them keep their insurance, and I've proposed a plan for individuals and small businesses to buy into Medicare as a first step, so that way it's not too disruptive to the system and doesn't threaten people's private plans if they're happy with them. But that's if I would have had the option of running as an independent in the general election, but then the Democratic Party would have put another candidate. They would have put forth someone in to run against me as a three-way general election. So it was a way to clear the field of Democrats so that I could narrow the race down to essentially a two candidate race in the general.
That's great. I hope more Democratic parties around the country. I have thought that, I think it was in North Dakota or something, there was an independent that had a really strong race a couple of years ago, maybe it was 2018. But, I mean, it's kind of awkward for Democrats to kind of concede their brand is not strong in some states. But, I think if it's somebody who kind of generally shares the values, that's great.
And also I should add that Elise Galvin came closer to beating Don Young than anyone has in years back in 2018. And she's running for a second time this cycle. And she's got a very, very good chance of beating Don Young finally, who, by the way, I believe is 86 years old. And it's time for him to move on. Alaska also has a ranked choice ballot initiative on the ballot here in November. And, the Democratic Party doesn't like it. The Republican Party doesn't like it. But it's a mechanism to elevate independent voices or people from smaller parties so that their voice can be heard and they don't get squashed by the party or by the bigger parties.
Yeah, in the end, I think it helps Democrats anyway. So, or not anti-Republicans. All right.
So next up, we have a question from Gray Black. Gray, you got the stage.
Hey, Dr. Gross. Really glad that you could make it out. I hear your message about, industry in Alaska hurting, especially with tourism kind of being shut down across the globe, frankly. And before I lived in Massachusetts, where I'm at now, I lived in Oklahoma, which is similar to Texas, similar to Alaska. A lot of the industry there is either military or it's oil. And, as we move forward, especially as we are trying to be better stewards of our planet and figure out some other sources for energy, outside of the oil dependency that we've had for a long time, what do you see as some of the way we grow smaller, more rural communities and empower people to, like, what kind of businesses or things you see leading us up to helping people sustain themselves, especially as, COVID is going to be another, 6 months at least, that we're, working through a vaccine and distributing that, and the instability that people are facing right now. And Alaska is, I think, at a of this because you're just much more isolated from the rest of the.
Yeah, I know a lot about Alaska, and here in Alaska, the two things that are holding back this state are high energy costs and high healthcare costs. And the energy costs are astronomically high in rural Alaska and the small villages all across the state. And, there's so many opportunities for clean, renewable energy out in those areas. And, here we are subsidizing the oil and gas industry in Alaska. If we're going to be subsidizing anybody, I think we should be subsidizing the renewable energy companies to promote clean renewable energy. And in Alaska, people are very, very excited about using renewable energy. And there's an island called Kodiak here in Alaska that is almost 100% renewable energy. I think it's 95%. But you're never going to be able to start, a bakery in Bethel if your energy costs are over the roof. And I don't know how that is going to apply to more rural parts of the lower 48, but I'm anxious to learn how it will. And I know that people are highly motivated in Alaska to consume renewable energy. But as long as there's a worldwide demand for oil, and Alaska has the resource, of course, and we're so dependent on it, of course we should produce it. But all the while, I think we should join back up with Paris, which is non-binding, by the way, to move try as a world to get away from consumption of petroleum products. And I think about the same time that the demand for oil continues to decline, Alaska's oil resources will diminish, and they already have. We've gone from 2 million barrels of oil a day in the pipeline down to 400,000 barrels of oil a day in the pipeline. And the writing is on the wall here. We need to figure out a new economy, or at least an economy that can go in parallel with the oil and gas industry. And as oil continues to decline, we need something to step up and replace it.
And just to follow up, I guess, you're saying that as we take care of and change our energy sources, as well as, take the burden of healthcare costs off, that's going to make rural populations more sustainable to live out there. Because I am concerned to some extent about how people take care of themselves outside of just moving to, more densely populated areas.
Right. Well, and also I'm sure in the lower 48, this is a huge issue too, but broadband is very limited in rural parts of Alaska. And as we've seen with COVID-19, so many jobs have gone virtual. My 4 kids are all working virtually, living out in Anchorage, working out of their homes. People could have good jobs working in remote parts of Alaska, and I'm sure rural parts of America as well, if they had access to good broadband. And as I see a big need for infrastructure projects as a means of putting people back to work, in the wake of COVID-19, broadband's a great way to do that, I believe.
Thanks so much for your answers.
All right, so our next question actually comes from YouTube, a YouTuber named Poe. Yenny, would you like to read the question off?
Yep. So Poe says, Mr. Gross, do you support ranked choice voting? What are your feelings on the 2-party duopoly that we currently have in our government?
Well, I'm voting yes on the ranked choice initiative here in Alaska, because as I said, the Democratic Party doesn't like it, the Republican Party doesn't like it, so there must be some merit to it. And I'm an independent, and someone asked a question about the ballot here in Alaska. The Republicans who are in power have gerrymandered the ballot, and so I'm going to be listed as the Democratic nominee with no notice of the fact or no indication that I'm a nonpartisan independent. 2 years ago, when Elise Galvin ran, at least they allowed a little N after her name to show that she was a nonpartisan. The Republicans here in the state have wiped that from the ballot to deceive people. And in fact, the Republicans, one of their approaches is to portray me as Chuck Schumer's hand-picked candidate and a Democrat, or a liberal Democrat, which of course is not true at all. I didn't do this for Chuck Schumer. I did this for Alaska, and Chuck Schumer had nothing to do with it. So I support ranked choice. I think it elevates independent voices in a way that they can't otherwise be heard.
Absolutely. Thank you for that answer.
I think partisanship is a huge national problem. President Trump has certainly contributed to that, but it's really gone back to the days of Newt Gingrich. And when I was on the campaign trail before I got shut down because of COVID, the 2 biggest issues that I heard by far that people are horrified with is partisanship and campaign finance. And I've been endorsed by End Citizens United, by the way. I don't take any corporate PAC money. All of our funding has been from individual contributions, and I'm beholden to no corporate interests. But partisanship, we need to bring this country back together if we're going to solve some of these really difficult, contentious issues like healthcare, like immigration, racial and social injustices. I just see our country splitting farther and farther apart, and it's scary to see where our country's going right now.
Yeah. So Poe from YouTube has a follow-up question. Do you also support open primaries, nonpartisan primaries?
I guess I'd need to look more into that. I'm not sure how to answer that. Is that similar to ranked choice?
So open primaries are usually also called jungle primaries, where it's all parties are in one funnel. There's not separate tickets for like Democrat and Republican primary.
Yeah,
Everyone would be going together, and then the top people from that go into the general election.
Yeah, okay. Well, the ballot measure here includes open primaries.
Mhm.
So yes.
Awesome.
Excellent. All right. So it looks like our next
And thank you,
question
Poe.
is from, thank you, Poe. Our next question is from Clay Mallory. Clay, take it away.
Okay, hi Al. How are you tonight?
Good.
Good. Hey, I've been up to your state, and it is absolutely beautiful up there. Too cold for me. I'm in Texas, but it's a great place to visit. Absolutely beautiful up there. So I'm kind of gonna tag on to Gray's question. He had an environmental related question. I just wanted to ask you, what is your sense of the level of environmental protections in Alaska right now? Are they, do you have any analysis on how you feel about, are you overprotective, or is there a lack of environmental protection?
Well, President Trump has rolled back clean air, water, and land protections from day one, and he's pretty much put on the table offshore oil and gas leasing and drilling. President Trump is a big threat to the environment up here. And, the Pebble Mine, which you may or may not be aware of, is a huge mining project that's very controversial nationwide from an environmental point of view. And the Republicans have been really in the back pocket of the corporate outside interests that have wanted to develop this mine. We can't shut Alaska down and turn it into a park. That's not my desire. I know some people down south would like to see Alaska turn into a park, but we need jobs up here. And so it needs to be a balanced so that we develop our resources in a sustainable fashion that doesn't threaten the indigenous people's way of life, which is one of the things that the Pebble Mine was threatening. And, I think we need to listen to the people that live here and see what they want. But yeah, Trump has rolled all those things back. And by the way, I almost did my residency in Texas. I started out in neurosurgery. And when I got off the plane in Houston in November, it was one of those you disembark outside. Halfway down the stairs, I was soaking wet in sweat. It was so hot. And I just thought there's no way I could ever work there. So I ended up in Michigan, and I ended up switching into orthopedics, and the rest is history.
Yeah, I hear you. Just one follow-up. Have you seen impacts of climate change in Alaska that have, caught your attention?
Oh yeah, it's everywhere. When I was a kid, I used to play in these massive piles of snow, and we'd dig tunnels through them, and they'd be on the corner of every street in the winter. My kids didn't have that experience at all, and our oceans are warming. The Chukchi Sea, which is on the northern shores of Alaska, north of Uktiagbek Barrow, was 10 degrees warmer 2 summers ago than normal. And our fish populations are all migrating north. The cod fishery collapsed last year because all the eggs are very sensitive to temperature, and so they didn't develop. We had massive failure of our fisheries all across the state this last summer, with the exception of Bristol Bay, which continues to do very, very well. But people are uniformly concerned about climate change, and people argue. Some of the conservatives will say, well, yeah, but it's just it has nothing to do with man. But even those people admit that the climate is changing, and villages are falling into the sea. There's erosion. The sea ice is receding, so that in the winter, the west coast and the northwest coast of Alaska is exposed to big storms in the winter, where before that ice would be there. And Nome and Kotzebue aren't seeing the sea ice until 2 months later than normal. So we're seeing really big changes.
Wow.
I'm sitting here in Anchorage right now. What is it, October 4th? You just see little bits of snow on the tops of the mountains here. It's not unusual at all. And I don't think it's snowed in Fairbanks yet. They used to have snow up there at the end of August.
Yeah. Wow.
Big changes.
Yeah. Thanks. Thank
And
you.
actually, you might be interested to know that the Alaska Federation of Natives, which is the big statewide organization that includes all the tribes and native corporations, last November put forward a climate change emergency resolution declaring climate change an emergency. It was controversial because some of the organizations from the far north who benefited the most from oil and gas taxes didn't want to get the oil companies upset with that, but ultimately it passed through, and the native indigenous people here in Alaska are really concerned about this issue.
Yeah. Wow. Thanks. Thank you.
All right, so we have time for one more question. Do we have any hands or any questions from YouTube? Okay.
None from online.
Well, I have a question for Nathaniel. Nathaniel, I understand, Al's campaign manager. How can we get involved? You're muted now, so I'll unmute you.
I am not, I'll clarify, I'm not the manager. I am, also, I think, the longest serving staff member. But, we had always, planned on trying to find a way to plug people in remotely that wanted to volunteer for the campaign. Didn't expect it to be a huge part of our field operation, but obviously with COVID-19, that has all changed. And we've developed a really robust remote volunteer program. So you can do phone calls, you can do text messages, you can write postcards, however you want to get involved with the campaign. I just messaged out the sign up form for our volunteer page. If you want to help us win this race, and I just want to put something in perspective. In 2014, when Mark Begich lost to Dan Sullivan, the incumbent, he lost by 2 points. Beto O'Rourke in 2018 also lost by 2 points. But 2 points in Alaska is 6,000 votes. 2 points in Texas was about 230,000 votes. So when we talk about how every vote matters, I mean, last cycle, the control of the state legislature was determined by a one vote margin in one of the House districts up in Fairbanks. This is a state where your phone calls, your text messages, your outreach, if you move a dozen votes, could literally decide the course of this election. And if we win this seat, there's a very good chance that it will flip control of the Senate and could, that effort could put this country back on the right track. So the link to volunteer is in the chat box, and I hope your members will sign that out and help us out. Fill it out and help us out.
Oh, absolutely. We will be sending that out right now on YouTube, actually, and we will also be sending it out to our members and constituents. Okay, so Jim, I see your hand up. I'll allow one last question. So go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I thought that maybe I would ask this to Dr. Gross, but it's actually more important appropriate maybe for Nathaniel. I've seen in the last few weeks kind of this emergence of a really proactive online community organizing program with the Biden campaign. So, and we haven't really discussed about how, like in Virginia, there's a lot of talk about how you reach rural voters because of like it's very difficult to canvass, and also they don't necessarily have broadband and things. So I imagine Alaska has some big issues with rural outreach, and just in general, because of COVID, it's hard to knock on doors. Although maybe you're doing some of that, I don't know. But I would definitely suggest checking out the Vote Joe app, and I'd be happy to help in any way to share you with information. I don't know if you can work with that directly or indirectly, but relational organizing is really the future, in the sense that we really need to be engaging voters through their personal networks now more than ever. And we have the technology now with things like the app, which helps you look up any voter in any state, and especially people in your contacts, which you know. So I just want to recommend that. And if you have done any program to try to get people talking to their friends and kind of, trying to convert new folks in creative ways like that, I was wondering if there's anything that you have been doing, but I'd be happy to share any resources to let you know how maybe the Alaska Democratic Party has resources that you can use and stuff like that.
Yeah, and Nathaniel, you want to address that? Because Jim, we've got an all-out effort in that regard, and Nathaniel will be happy to talk to you about that.
Yeah, we have an incredibly sophisticated organizing model. Relational organizing has been a core part of our plan from day one. I can't remember what exact platform we're using. It's a mobile app that does exactly what you're talking about. It lets people go through their contacts and identify who they might be able to bring on board.
You have Outvote?
I'm sorry?
Outvote?
You know what? I honestly,
Reach?
I think it might be Reach, actually. I think it's Reach. So relational organizing has been a huge component of our strategy. But also, in Alaska, rural is different than what it is down in the lower 48. I think it'd be more appropriate to refer to it as remote, because in Alaska, rural refers to these villages that, don't have roads going in and out of them. We have developed a very large rural program focused around hiring community organizers, people that live in the villages, hiring them as community organizers and getting them to turn out the vote within their villages. And I think we have a budget for something like 200 or 220 community organizers out in these villages. We have over 40 field organizers in the state, which probably gives us, I think, one of the highest, if not the highest, ratios of organizers to voters of any of the competitive races in the country. So, your point is definitely well taken, and we have been running with both the relational thing and with the relational side of things and the rural organizing model really from very early on.
We've got a huge program of peer-to-peer texting and calls, a lot of peer-to-peer, especially with COVID-19.
And then I think
Yeah.
there's one more question.
Yep. So the last question comes from Von Doromal on YouTube. Most of us here know that the Alaskan Permanent Fund is financed by the sale of oil. What are the plans to supplement that?
Well, the Alaska Permanent Fund was originally, or actually the money that went into the Permanent Fund was oil and gas revenues. The dividend, of course, the UBI, comes from the revenue that the Permanent Fund brings in, a 5-year rolling average. And so the current price of oil, the current amount of revenues that go into the permanent fund really at this point have very little impact on the actual size of the dividend. And by the way, our oil sovereign wealth fund is somewhere between 50 and 60 billion dollars at this point. It got as high as 70. I'm not sure where it's at right now. I think it dropped some with COVID, but it's nice to have it on a 5-year rolling average, so it doesn't take too big of a hit with just 1 year with bad returns. And the investments are all over the country, not just in Alaska, not just in the stock market, real estate as well, bonds. It's very well diversified and managed by a number of different financial institutions.
All right. So that was our last question. Dr. Gross, did you have anything else you'd like to say to the viewers? We'd like to be respectful of your time here.
Well, I just wanted to say thanks for the opportunity to meet with you. And, you know, COVID, of course, has made it difficult to develop personal relationships because we used to have in-person events. And I hate the fact that I have to be in my camper for these Zoom events. But by the way, I'm in a camper, not a spaceship. But I'd love to meet you when I get there. And my door is as open to you as it is to anyone else. And I'd love to. You know, I'm a doctor. I like to listen to people. I have a lot to learn. You know, I have a strong background in healthcare and in the environment through my commercial fishing background and hardworking Alaskan people. And there's a lot of issues that I'm not an expert on that I'm looking forward to learning more about and to try and, you know, help the country in however I can. So thanks a lot. It's a very, very viable race. If you want to volunteer, that'd be terrific. If you can contribute to the race, that'd be very helpful. And you know, this race is getting elevated more and more on a national, in the national spotlight because of the significance of it. We may end up being the state that flips control of the Senate. I hope I think we're going to win. I really do. And so it's exciting to be in this position. And I just wanted to say thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Gross.
Thanks,
we
everybody.
are extremely happy. So,
all right,
you all heard it here.
You guys have a great day. Thank you.
You too.
Thank you.
I'll be in touch with you, Nathaniel.
Sounds good, Yenny. I look forward to connecting.
Yep.
So, everyone listening at home, go help Dr. Gross. You've heard it. His race is winnable, and we can do this.
Indeed.
Where is there a link I guess that link you could
I just dropped it in the chat again.
Is it on screen share right now?
Yep.
Yep. Go dralgrosak.com.
There you go.
All right.
Yep.
Yeah, I also dropped it in chat.
Sign up, volunteer, and help.
So here we are to continue the meeting with the Humanity First Movement National Update. We have updates from Yenny about movie night, from Gray about org management, from Angelo about the interim board. Then I'll be delivering a candidate support update, and then a civic engagement update from Jim. So starting out with Yenny, what's happening this Friday?
So this Friday, we're doing a double feature. The films are not super long. Rank the Vote's about 15 minutes long, so we're going to be getting into that. Then we'll be doing a half-hour or so of discussion based on the Rank the Vote video, which is about 15 minutes long. I think I said that already. And then we go into Suppressed. We'll be starting that probably about 9:45, if I remember correctly. And that we're going to be going into discussions about the previous cycle in Georgia and how all of the votes got suppressed and everything that went on surrounding that. So that one's going to be, I think, a really interesting one to tune in for if you're looking for information about what happened then, how we can fix it, and Rank the Vote's about ranked choice voting. So.
All right. So we have some heavy, serious documentaries coming up. Did you say that we have a comedy the week following?
Well, we don't have a movie picked for the week following, but the week after that, which is the 30th, we have Rocky Horror Picture Show.
All right, that's going to be incredible. So keep that on your calendars. So, but we'll have something lighthearted to be determined for following Rank the Vote and Suppressed.
Yep.
Good. Interim board update, Angelo. Explain what is happening now. We have a soft merge with Humanity Forward underway, that we're beginning negotiations, and that there's a proposal of, wait, is this the same thing? Okay, I'm sorry, ignore the slide because it's kind of a copy of the other slide before. So yeah, Angelo, I'll just go off screen share so you can talk without any confusion of incorrect slides.
Keep this. Okay. So what's going on with the interim board is that as of right now, we are combining forces completely with Humanity Forward to push for candidates. So we are getting the whole movement behind making this last ditch effort. We have 1 month to get Yang Gang elected. Let's do this. And that includes Dr. Al Gross. We need to make sure that we get people into Congress, because the only way that we're going to actually fix the problems of the 21st century is with people that understand the 21st century in the positions of power. Now, we have also started discussions with Humanity Forward on the concept of becoming an official chapter. That has been offered to us, and we are having talks and negotiations about what that will look like. We will be filling in everyone as we get information. Those talks have been delayed until after the election, however, so we won't be having any new updates anytime soon, unfortunately. I know, you're all waiting with bated breath. So for the time being, we are looking to make a push now, see how we work together, and negotiate a possible official roll-in the future. We will be discussing this more with the All States meetings and with the Yang Gang. Anyone that has any questions, comments, or concerns are welcome to contact us on our Slack in the Interim Board feedback channel. All right, so next subject, Colleen, if you'd like to resume screen sharing.
Yeah, thank you, Angelo. Next is an update from Gray on organization management.
Yeah. I also wanted to give a little bit of context to Angelo's statement. In one of the reasons that we think it makes sense to roll into Humanity Forward and do kind of a soft collaboration is because, you know, part of us creating state chapters are, you know, state chapters that would be under Humanity Forward. It doesn't make sense for us necessarily to recreate the wheel when it comes to having groups who want to support Humanity Forward and, you know, support what we're doing, because we have a very strong overlap in what our goals and objectives are. For the update from the board, so in addition to the fact that, you know, with everything going on with the election, it's been very hard to get some of the legal work done, creating organization frameworks, bylaws, and that sort of thing, as we're, you know, doing our last ditch attempt to make sure we get some congressmen, some senators from the Yang Gang, from, you know, who are supporting basic income, who are supporting, you know, universal healthcare, who are supporting some of the objectives and the Humanity Forward vision we have for the country in office, having a discussion about the elections internal to our organization seem like they're going to distract us from that bigger picture objective. The Deep Dives Org Management Group has proposed that we push back our interim board turnover to November 29th, following the November 3rd election, so that we can spend, you know, the rest of our time and energy focused on the candidates that we're supporting for November 3rd. And November 29th means that we can have the turnover election before holidays and people start to check out in that way. So that is the proposal. We will vote on that at this meeting to determine whether that's something we think we want to do or not. The other thing that the Deep Dives Org Management Group has discussed, and we believe this is, the next step in moving forward, is moving the interim board terms to 6 months. They were at 4 before, and some of the obstacles to having a more frequent turnover, something that we've learned from the experience over this summer, is, longer time of onboarding, some inconsistency when you're communicating with new organizations, and a frequent change of leadership that makes it a little harder to establish some of the norms and get longer term projects accomplished. And we think having a longer term for that will be more beneficial. That is, in some of the other organizations that we've looked at or worked with, they have longer term officials or representatives in their organizations, and we think that might be helpful for us as well. This is not a decision that we're voting on today. There are deep dive org management meetings on Thursday nights where we will continue to have this discussion, as well as a discussion on what we might do if someone decides that 6 months is too long, and if we do special elections, creation of bylaws, things like that. So Thursday night meetings is when we will talk about that. Tonight is just for, whether or not we believe it's okay to push back the interim board turnover date from October 18th to November 29th. I think that is all for my update. Thanks, Colleen.
All right. Thank you, Gray. Thanks very much for all of that. We're going to go back into candidate support update at this time. We have the channel in the Slack, calling texting channel. Oh, I'm sorry. It's actually a number 2 channel, not number 3. So follow that channel for daily updates on who is having calling and texting campaigns happening that very day, and scheduling out ahead, of course. If you're not on the Slack, then follow on our Facebook page and our Twitter, because we're also going to be posting graphics for when those are happening, such as this one. We've got, Adam Christensen is having these power hour phone banking events from 5 to 6, Monday through Saturday, and then power hours 4 to 5 on Sunday. And so there's the calling texting channel, Facebook and Twitter. And the third place to go for finding out about events is on our candidate support calendar. So here we can see that early voting starts in California tomorrow. It starts in Arizona on Wednesday. So these votes, it's already time for get out the vote. Last things about this are we've got, the screen come back now. Okay.
It's
There's
2020.
a special event. Yeah, it is. We've got a special event coming up on October 12th. It's Dungeons and Dragons for Dems. Hexel told us about it last week, and he's got this awesome infomercial about it on YouTube. We're already just about over time, so instead of going through this whole video commercial right now, when you stay for the hang, I'll play this commercial for you. We don't have to head into it right now. The last two things about candidate support are Humanity Forward is organized the information for each candidate into this really cool Airtable that's going to be revealed later this week. And it's like a virtual index card system that shows you all the websites to go to support the candidates, to donate to them, to get onto their phone bank sessions, all of that. Most importantly, there's an all hands meeting Thursday, I believe at 7 p.m. It's being finalized. But again, go to the calling texting channel to get the final information on that event. Go to the Facebook page, Twitter, candidate support calendar to get information on the all hands meeting Thursday. Then that is, that brings you all to everything here. the link to these slides is here on this slide deck, and that's how you can gather back the information from these slides when you need to after the fact. This is also going to be on YouTube. As we've been live streamed, the recording will be up on YouTube tomorrow. So thank you all for coming. Do we have anything else for closing? Angelo, Yenny?
Political.
Oh, yep, civic and political update. Yes, Jim. Bring us that update, please, in a couple minutes.
Yeah, I didn't have much of a slide anyway, so it's no big deal. Yeah, well, I just wanted to give one more shout out to the channel, Political and Civic channel, and the reason why is that I have been in the process of posting a lot of resources and some tips and information that might be helpful to folks in the coming weeks. To give everyone a quick idea is that, you know, in 2007, when I was helping with the Obama campaign, it was kind of like the beginning of social media, and there was a lot of progress made. And I actually basically talked about relational organizing with Obama's former campaign manager when he wrote a book. I gave him a memo that he never responded to. I put my email on it, and he didn't get back to me. But after all these years, I'm seeing there have been some community leader events that are trainings and things that have been organized by the Biden campaign that are really steering us in the direction of using online networks, our personal friends and groups we're with, to organize, especially in lieu of the fact that there is not much canvassing happening and stuff like that because of COVID. But the technology has caught up. The kind of the outvote or reach type apps are, you know, pretty close to where they need to be. And there's actually in the VoteJoe app, there is a Yang Gang team that we can create. And so I'm going to work on that this week. And you know, I would love for the Yang Gang to have a lot, like, reach out to their friends and just, you know, you could just simply remind them to vote. You don't have to like be hardcore for Joe if you don't want to. But the great thing is to know about the tools and think about how you can use them in your community with your friends and campaigns that you're involved in. Our Humanity Forward candidates and stuff, especially if you're helping Al and things like that. You could talk to people about Al as well, and our other candidates. So there's a lot of exciting things happening, I think, that could change the way campaigns are done in the future. And I'm glad that some smart people are getting involved and trying to organize us, even though there's only 30 days left, which is kind of hard to do something like this in 30 days, to do the outreach necessary. But if you're interested in that kind of thing, digital organizing and engaging with your networks, please join the Political and Civic Engagement channel. And also, like I said, I'm sharing tips about what I'm hearing from different campaigns. And I'd love to be able to use it as a platform, or you know, use our Slack as a platform for sharing information that can be helpful for other organizers around the country. So hopefully we can share a lot of information in the final 30 days and really make the Yang Gang look like stars and game changers when it comes to November 3rd. So anyway, I just want to give a little shout out about that, and I'll share some links in the chat as we get started for the hang.
Why look like stars when we can be stars?
Well, I think there's an expression about that, something like, oh, fake it till you make it. Well, or you know, and maybe this is the opposite. You gotta show, you gotta brag because you already made it, or I don't know.
Yeah, no one knows what you're doing if you're not telling at least someone. Agreed.
See, I'm done.
All right,
Has to-
thank you
has
so
some-
much, Jim. That was enlightening. And again, Jim has a channel in the Slack of a #2 channel, Civic and Political Engagement, and we can signal boost what he posts there in Facebook and Twitter for those who aren't yet on the Slack. But we recommend coming onto the Slack. That's definitely the best place to stay plugged in. And again, the Slack is where there's a board feedback channel. So when you want to really be engaged with the leadership in this organization, the Slack's actually the only place to do that. So, okay, we'll convert this over to a hang now. Yenny, do you want to pull?
Awesome. I
the-
am unfortunately hanging up on YouTube. Bye, YouTube.
Okay, I'd like to